What do Joe Rogan and Michael Shellenberger have in common? Well, besides the fact that they were both doing a podcast together recently on the JRE, what they also have in common is a disdain for the World Economic Forum. And what you're about to hear is both of their takes on the organization, as well as a few clips from me, because it's my channel. Let's go.
Were you worried that the world was falling apart? You can stop worrying right now because the WEF is back with solutions for you, whether you like them or not.
A New York Times reporter asked recently, he's like, why don't they just do them by Zoom? They take, it's like 30,000 people. It's all this energy. Of course, every time they have them, there's all these stories about all the private jets that fly and arrive there and the hypocrisy of it. But I kind of was joking, why don't we do the Hajj over Zoom? Why don't you have a pilgrimage, over Zoom? And the reason it's a pilgrimage, it's a religious event. It shouldn't be understood as an event that will decide how nations, how they use energy or how they use food. That's the conceit of the people who attend those meetings. But these are people often who are activists, they're politicians, these are people that don't really understand how electrical grids work or energy systems work. They go there and and the journalists are there, they also don't understand this, the activists are there. They have very little to do with like real world decision making. So that's why I kind of go, it's just a festival of narcissism.
The only problem with what Michael just said is that it's proven to not just be a festival of narcissism. See, if all these heads of states and heads of industries just went back to their countries and the conversation stopped there, I could agree with what Michael's saying. But these people go back to their countries, go back to their companies, go back to their positions of power, and begin inching towards the goals that they have set out in these meetings. And that takes it from a festival of narcissism to a well-oiled machine, executing the goals they have set out to accomplish. If they left the conversation in Davos, that would be one thing, but they don't. They stay connected and they begin moving in unison to achieve their set agenda, which arguably within itself becomes a kind of one world government, or at least the beginnings of it.
Let's look at the World Economic Forum. It's crazy, but I think if you look at this last one, I wrote a piece with a former Financial Times correspondent who also, like me, has been obsessed with the World Economic Forum. We called it, I think it's called, Davos is a cult and a grift, but it's also a bid for global domination. And we just looked at like how it's all those things at the same time. It's about power and money and also about ideology and dogma. I mean, I'm pretty sure like Russell Brand and Glenn Beck have done serious brand damage to Davos and WEF. And you.
Joe Rogan calls out the World Economic Forum.
Well, how does the World Economic Forum actually wield influence? Because it used to be a thing that really didn't get much public attention. They could go there and they could all have these meetings and decide the fate of the world and try to sort of move the world in general directions. Like, people didn't know about the World Economic Forum 6-7 years ago. At least most people didn't. They didn't hear about it. They didn't hear about Klaus Schwab and you will own nothing and you will be happy. When you hear them say stuff like that and hear them talk about young global leaders, you're like, what is happening here? Like, you seem like a bad guy in a science fiction movie. Like, he wears that crazy outfit that I show you, the picture we have in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Like, could you be any more obvious that you're fucking insane? Like, you're an insane, megalomaniacal dictator type character who wants to run the world, and you're literally dressing like a Star Wars character. The fact that he chose to leave his house dressed like that, like, yes, I will adjust the peons. All the public needs to know that we are in control. Well, how about the Great Reset? He wrote a book called The Great Reset, and then they denied that the Great Reset is the thing they're working towards. Like, bro, you wrote a book.
Right, yeah.
You wrote a book.
Yeah.
It's called The Great Reset.
A quote from George Orwell's 1984. "The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command." We're starting to see more and more of that every single day. And you might feel like, well, I'm not one of those people. I know I'm not. I'm sure if you're watching this, you're not. I'm not one of those people that's giving into that type of thing. I stand up. I think for myself. Well, like Jordan Peterson brought up, I made a video about it. When he talks about how we get into a terrible place as a society, it's inch by inch, step by step. They push a little bit, then we kind of reject, then they pull back, and then they do it again. And then they do it again. It's not just about you every time there's a push. It's about everybody. And bit by bit, we start to see people feel that stare that happens when they're in the break room, when they're at the dinner table, when they're amongst their friends, when they're amongst their peers, when they're amongst people they respect. And inch by inch, thing by thing that happens in the media, one or two people, 1 or 200, 1 or 2,000 people begin to change their tune, and they begin to reject the evidence that is right before their eyes and their ears.
Well, that's why the World Economic Forum and things along those lines are so fascinating, because you can see that they're the ones that are holding the strings that dangle the narratives in front of the people, that make them attractive. And then you realize, well, this is not our real problem. Our problem is not really these narratives. Our problem is who's promoting these narratives and what are they doing while they're promoting that, and we're distracted.
It goes right back to the video I made called Klaus Schwab's 5 Pillars of Control. If you haven't seen it, type that in right now, or go to the channel, find that video, because he has something that's one of the pillars. It's called civil society. And what civil society is things like the WEF, things like the WHO, things like that. Organizations that help you know what you should be concerned about. And that's the thing about this. Joe said, they don't make these things attractive right off the bat. First, they build concern. Then they get certain people in the media, like celebrities, to show their concern and support for these things that are going on, these efforts, whether it's, police brutality, whatever that you've seen in the mainstream media news. And once you see that concern, maybe not you, but a lot of people, once they realize who's concerned, well, they want to have views that align with Jennifer Aniston and Sean Penn and Idris Elba and The Rock, and name anybody who fits the demographic that they're trying to go after. That's how they do it. First, it's concern. Then it's celebrity. Then it becomes attractive to be concerned about it.
There was no major heads of state that went this year. There were no major CEOs that went.
People pulled out of it.
So it wasn't just CEOs that didn't show up to the event this year. There's actually some key players who also didn't show up to the event. If you can see here, U.S. President Joe Biden, China's Jinping, Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, French President Emmanuel Macron, and UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. These people are actually very key, as well as if we go down here, you can see also George Soros pulled out as well. So perhaps people are actually feeling the heat. Perhaps they don't want the articles written about them. Perhaps they don't want the media's eye on them.
It's become embarrassing. That's great.
Well, they've also been caught lying.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they've been caught lying about their agenda, and one of the things that they were caught lying about, you will own nothing and you will be happy.
Yes.
Which is a fucking insane thing to say.
We went through it all. The things they said were disinformation. We never said anybody should eat insects.
Bullshit.
It's like you go to their website and you're like, I can't believe they. I was like, I wrote a thing on. I was like, they really do want you to eat insects.
The video I'm about to show you is going to be silent, and I'm just going to do a voiceover with it. The reason that I'm doing this is because whenever I use World Economic Forum videos, I tend to get copyright strikes and all sorts of things like that. So to avoid that, I'm just keeping this one silent. But the video is an example of what Michael is talking about. As you can see here, it is this chef explains why we should all eat more bugs. And within this video, so he's just talking about it, they're just giving you all these headings that you could read here because they're good for the planet, takes a fraction of the resources, compared crickets to beef, it's way easier to make crickets, takes less water, less gas house emissions, just every single thing you can think of to try and compel people to feel like eating bugs is a better proposition than eating meat. There's many of these videos on their site. Said by 2050, there'll be a lot more people eating bugs, putting pressure on water supplies. That's in regards to meat. Increase gas house emissions again when it comes to meat. And, you know, eating insects is good for us as well. They're rich in protein, healthy fats, and vitamins. People around the world have eaten insects for centuries. Today, about a quarter of the world's population eats bugs regularly. And there are new experiments all the time. You know, the Swiss are eating them in balls and burgers. The Finnish are making bread out of them. In Kenya, they're teaching people to farm insects. And how do they taste? Well, that is all I want to show of this video, but it just shows, as you can see in the corner, and you know what? I'll just skip right over to the end of the video. This is literally from their site, as you can see here.
Am I making too big of a deal about this World Economic Forum?
Oh, not at all. Good to be with you, Jesse. I think you said it right. It's a creepy event. I mean, these are people that claim to be wanting transparency and openness, but as we discovered this week in our reporting earlier, they hide their own finances, both for the World Economic Forum and for the Klaus Schwab Foundation. It shouldn't be lost on people that this is a group based in Switzerland, which has the most restrictive banking rules, allowing for people, including criminal syndicates, to hide their wealth. It's a greenwashing exercise that consists of people flying in by private jet, promoting insect eating. Yes, it's true. It's not a conspiracy. Promoting insect eating rather than meat eating to the masses, telling poor countries they shouldn't use fossil fuels while they fly private jets everywhere. I mean, it's really a litmus test for who are the worst people in the world.
So is what Michael said an overreaction? Is he overreacting? Is what he just said an overstatement? I know for myself, when I see someone saying something in the news now, I kind of do a little check to see if they're a part of the WEF, just to see where they stand. I'll let you decide. Is it an overreaction, or are there just a lot of people rejecting what they see with their eyes and their ears? Let me know in the comments how you feel about it. Other than that, I'm out. Subscribe.